Hello everyone. This video is just going to be a quick question and answer. So I I did ask for this and in the post a lot of people put more video ideas, which I'm like, thank you. You've given me a very long list to work through, which is nice because sometimes I'm just sitting there blanking like what haven't I complained about lately? But there's only a couple questions that are actually question and answers. But I think this would be a fun little thing to do maybe once a month, maybe. Just something that's a bit easier to edit and a bit easier to go through. So, without further ado, first question from John Cole Jones. As an old, I'd really appreciate your take as a young woman on how we can most effectively communicate to other young women that transitioning will be the biggest mistake of their lives, preferably before they begin injecting hormones and mutilating themselves. This is a really good question because I think to an extent, when you are dealing with mental illness, it is very difficult to take the advice or warnings of people who are not suffering the same thing that you are. Like when I was younger and I was suffering from depression, like real severe suicidal depression, my dad would say stuff like, "You're not taking care of yourself. You're going to regret this when you're 30, when you have an impact from your bad diabetes care. You're going to regret this when you're older." And all I could think was, well, I'm not going to live until 30 anyway. So who cares? And it was kind of like a reveling in my misery that I couldn't see the same thought process that he was using. It was like we were using two different tracks. I could not see the logic for what he was saying. And so to an extent, I think that a lot of young women, they'll hear "don't transition" and they won't hear the same path we took to get to that conclusion. Even when you are spelling it out, even when you are pulling out the logic and the numbers, we have to remember, for one, that the reading rates, the literacy rates in the US are abysmal right now. More than half of US adults under 30 cannot read above an elementary school level, which means that just pulling up statistics and pulling up studies is not necessarily going to help because people cannot read newspapers, they cannot read articles, they can't read more than captions. And so they're getting a lot of their information from media, from YouTube, from TikTok, from pictures. And that definitely makes it harder to get across these messages of here's reasons why you're going to regret this later. I also think that we have an issue with how we present transitioning. Detransitioners in particular are often demonized by the trans community, and so their stories are not held or told by anyone who's looking to transition. When you're looking to make a big purchase or a big change, you need to look at both sides of the equation. When I was deciding to move to a foreign country, I didn't just go, oh, I'm going to just look at people who really loved Cambodia. I looked at both sides. I saw that there were high levels of sexual assault. I saw that there was a lot of modesty issues, a lot of poverty. I knew that when I was coming in. I was as prepared as I could be as a single person moving to a different country. And so I wasn't necessarily entirely caught all the way off guard because I had that knowledge of both sides. I wasn't just listening to people who went and visited and had fun and went home. And so I think the best way to communicate to other young women is to connect with them. I know that it's a little bit hypocritical of me because I don't really, when I'm on Tinder or I'm meeting new people and they have pronouns, I don't really want to talk to them. I don't want to start a friendship with someone who I know we're going to have a lot of arguments with, a lot of deprogramming basically to get across to them. But I think it's important to reach out and to continue to be kind and continue to inform where you can. This means if there's people who are looking towards talking to a rad femme on Twitter or Tumblr or whatever, or even in real life and they're questioning you, stay calm, stay polite, try your best to have a normal conversation. I think a good thing to do is to leave out buzzwords and to continue with raising class consciousness. That's a really big one. I think that we have to really get it out there that like a lot of women feel disconnected from their bodies. A lot of women, if not all of us, have felt dehumanized and objectified and scared at being sexualized by other people. These feelings are being presented as being trans-exclusive experiences, but these are experiences that everyone has. And so I think that in general, just one of the best things we can do is just continue to have an open dialogue, to continue to talk to them, and to continue to have open arms, because one of the worst parts of the trans community is how it cuts off anyone who questions anything. We don't do that. If you have a question, I will answer. Even those who argue in bad faith, just even having the conversation, even if you don't convince them, you might convince someone else. So not the best solution, I suppose, but communication is key. Actively talking and having a dialogue is the best way to communicate to other young women, because I definitely think that saying it's mutilation or presenting it in an entirely negative form is only going to alienate them further. Question 2. Ty said hi. What kind of music do you listen to? I really listen to a lot of classic rock. If I'm listening to radio, it's classic rock. Otherwise, I listen to a lot of folk and country. My favorite artist is Amigo the Devil. And I went to go see him in Asheville last year. I drove like 3 hours to go see him. And it was the best concert ever. I know all of his songs, like all of them. He does a lot of Southern Gothic type work. A lot of his songs are really relating to the feelings of toxic love, of being in the South. Like whenever I listen to his stuff, I always feel like I'm at home because that's what it feels like driving in the Georgia countryside.
So I'm shaking around like I'm hanging from something I know is about to break. Like I'm biting the gun, but the safety is on. I threw up the pills I ate.
I also really love the Crane Wives.
I've seen good men spoil, chained to their jobs like hounds.
They are a really great woman-led band, another folk band, strong female vocalist, which I love so much. And probably my number 3, like on my Spotify playlist, would be IMX, which is a complete different genre, but his work also gives me so many emotions. It's something that I love screaming out in the car when I'm driving anywhere. I used to like Girl in Red, but I feel like it's a little too aesthetic nowadays. I don't think it really reflects the experience that I've had. I also really liked The Amazing Devil, at least their first 2 albums. Their last one, I think, was a little bit cliche. But yeah, basically, I like weird music that my mom hates listening to. Everyone who gets in my car hates my music choices. I apologize in advance, but I really do like those 3 bands, well, 4-ish bands, the most. Pepper Ran Fan 1. What fictional books are you currently reading or have enjoyed in the past? Okay, so recently, the most recent book I read was Wendy Darling, which was a feminist retelling of Peter Pan, wherein Wendy was institutionalized after they returned from Neverland because she refused to recant that it was a real thing. Her brothers eventually thought that it was all a dream. One day, when she's married in the future, her daughter gets taken by Peter Pan and she has to go on a journey to go get her. And I really liked it because I feel like a lot of books that are branded as feminist these days have a lot of gender rhetoric in them, and this one didn't. Like, there was a whole thing where her husband was like, she got married to him because it was like a business arrangement because he'd been caught writing letters to another guy, or like how she mentions some of the things about colonialism or First Nations people from Canada. Like, there's a lot of really interesting bits in there that didn't feel forced. It felt very natural, and although it kind of had some of that ethereal, wishy-washy writing in it, I really enjoyed it overall. But if we're going to talk about my favorite books, The Library at Mount Char. It is by Scott Hawkins, and it is about basically these kids who are raised by basically God. Someone murders God, and our main character is trying to figure out who murdered God and trying to prevent the end of the world from happening. It's a really great plot twists. I think it's one of the most engaging books. I originally read it when I was, 14 or 15, and I stole it from the library. I enjoyed it so much that I stole it from the library. So that tells you a lot. I like reading a lot of horror and science fiction. So another one of my top ones, there are only a few books that I bother buying physical copies of because of how much I move, and one of them is Tender is the Flesh, which is a translated book about a world where we can't eat animals anymore, and so cannibalism becomes normalized. And the violence in there, I feel like sometimes when you read books by guys and they'll have sexual or just gratuitous violence in there, and you're just kind of reading it and you're like, you seem weird about this topic. I was reading her work, and every bit of violence she writes about is impactful. It's there for a reason. It goes to illustrate the way that we can normalize horrible, horrible things. And it's a disturbing read, but it is an absolutely amazing one. Oh, I also really like Feed by Moira Grant. And so she has a couple series that I absolutely loved. Feed is one of them. It's a first book in the series called News Flesh, and it's about basically zombies happened, but we survived. And the main character, at least for the first book, is female. She is super smart. I do think I hate to use the phrasing not like other girls, but there's a bit of she's kind of presented that way, but not in a negative way, like, if that makes sense. She doesn't like dresses, she doesn't like feminine stuff, but it's never presented as being like a way to be better than other girls. It's just her personality, which I really love. She's kind of mean. I love that. And I also really liked let's see. What's the story behind the Klimt dress by Size Guy? I wish you guys had easily pronounceable names. The Klimt dress is actually because my uncle is gay. He married he's gay, married not my other uncle. When I was a kid, we went to go visit him up in New Jersey, and that was one of the prints they had in their house, like a huge print. I was a kid, so I probably looked smaller than it looked, but it was at least 4 feet tall, and it was super detailed. It had gold leaf. It was beautiful, and the difference in their home in comparison to my Nana and Pop-Pop's home, in comparison to my own home, they felt like a house that was full of love. And I saw that picture, and I think that I kind of put those two feelings, that Thanksgiving dinner, the feeling of love, the feeling of, like that Hallmark movie Christmas vibe, that's what that Christmas felt like. And I really think I imprinted that onto the painting. And so it's always been one of my favorite paintings. And just this intense feeling of love that you get from that picture, of desire. I love it so much. And I actually tried to get a print of that for a dress, but it's insanely expensive to print your own fabric. So maybe one day I shall do a video where I can afford and make that, but until then. And our final question by Hannibal082. Thoughts on the women who were attacked at the Auckland protest and how the TRAs weaponized the event against women? So I heard about this via Tumblr for the first time, and to be honest, I'm not super duper familiar with Posey Parker beyond the, adult human female thing and the fact that she is quote unquote anti-transgender rights. But I disagree with using violence to shut down other people's groups. I just don't think, it gets on my nerves like nothing else, because to me it shows that your group is afraid of having anyone hear the opposition. And I feel like a lot of people are just out there screaming and like, this is just an excuse for you to be violent towards women. That's basically what it comes down to. It's an excuse for you to be violent towards women and to pretend that is some new wonderful thing that you're doing in the name of progress, and it's not. If you disagreed with her, then you could have had another event after the fact. You could have gone ahead and had an event after she had her event and debunked everything she said or attempted to. If you actually had any ground to stand on, you could have remained peaceful and showed that you disagreed through a vocal opposition. Because when it comes to ideology, there are ideologies that are blatantly violent, that do incite violence. For example, men's rights activism, inceldom. Those things actively incite violence. They make people take up guns and enact those ideas in person. This is not the same thing. Saying that women are a class that needs protection because we are oppressed on the basis of our sex is not an idea that requires you to punch an older woman. I'm not surprised that it went down the way it did. I just think that, for one, the guy who did it is on the run in the U.S. I do it again. Yeah, but you're a puss. You're a wuss who is not going to face the consequences for your action. And two, I'm not surprised at all that they decided to put it out this way. I do hope that this kind of thing helps to pique more people, because I don't see how you can ever look at a group that thinks it's okay to punch elderly women or elderly men and go, yeah, that's the group I support. Those are the questions that we got this time. I will put up a new one probably after this video. And those questions will be answered at the end of this month, going into May. So the thing will be just our once a month question and answer thing. It can be feminism related, it can be personal related. Just something quick and easy to edit, and something that give you a bit more information about me. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!